Hello, my name is Emma Snape, Special Event and Program Manager for the Maltz Museum of Jewish Heritage. On behalf of everyone at the museum, welcome to our virtual program, My Story, Mary Garceau and Melody Stewart with Becky Ruppert McMahon. This program is inspired by our newest special exhibition, Notorious RPG, The Life and Times of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, presented locally by PNC Bank. I'd like to thank PNC Bank and all of our other sponsors and partners, including today's programming partners, the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association and the Nancy and David Wolf Holocaust and Humanities Center, who helped make it possible to bring a first-of-its-kind exhibition like this one to Cleveland. The exhibition is open now, and we're welcoming visitors to join us safely in person, Wednesday through Sunday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. We're using best practice protocols such as contactless time ticketing, wearing masks, and maintaining social distancing to ensure a safe visiting experience for all. And of course, we also welcome you to explore the Notorious RBG from the comfort of home. On the first and third Tuesday of the month at 2 p.m., we offer a virtual online tour of the exhibit, or you can bring a group for a private online experience. You can learn more about ways to connect through our website, www.maltzmuseum.org. Thank you for joining us today as part of the My Story series, a monthly conversation between exceptional local Cleveland women who have paved their own path, simultaneously paving the way for others by breaking down barriers to live and work with passion and purpose. In today's program, two groundbreaking, boundary-busting powerhouse women, Supreme Court Justice of Ohio, Melody Stewart, and General Counsel for Sherwin-Williams, Mary Garceau, are interviewed by Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association CEO, Becky Ruppert McMahon, to share lessons learned as they became top leaders in a field where women and people of color continue to fight for equality. Before we get started, I have just a brief housekeeping notice. If you are here for CLE credit through the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association, please ensure that you have video enabled so you're able to see our panelists today, and that after the program, you complete the brief survey I send you over email. And now, to get started, I'll introduce our moderator today, Becky Ruppert McMahon. Since January 2015, Becky Ruppert McMahon has served as the Chief Executive Officer for the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association, the indispensable go-to organization for matters of law and justice in Northeast Ohio. She is responsible for the day-to-day operations and resources of the nearly 5,000 member professional association, as well as its charitable arm, the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Foundation. In addition, Becky is a founding member of the board of directors for First Mutual Holding Co., a member-owned holding company created in 2015 to help mutual banks serve the community and prosper in today's financial climate. She also serves as a director for the holding company's largest bank subsidiary, First Federal Lakewood. And now I'll let Becky take it away. Thank you, Becky.
Great, thank you, Emma, and thank you so much for this opportunity to bring today's conversation together. The CMBA has been delighted for the chance to partner with the Maltz throughout the beginning and the kickoff of the RBG exhibit, which goes through this summer. We've had a number of different conversations, and I gotta say that the feedback has just been outstanding. And I wanna put a plug in right up front. If you have not yet gone to see the exhibit, let me encourage you, don't walk, run to the exhibit. It is that good, and I am looking forward to actually going back for my second trip, and then I have a third trip also planned. So get thee to the Maltz. Well, today's conversation is really one of my favorites because I have the privilege of speaking with two incredibly accomplished leaders in our community who also happen to be members of the CMBA. And we have designed today's conversation as an opportunity for all of us in a fairly informal way to get to know both Mary and Justice Stewart as we go forward in learning a little bit about the pathways that they have taken to get to the leadership roles that they currently hold, to learn a little bit about their leadership styles and their philosophies, and hopefully to give some good practical tips and advice for those of us who are always looking to do better and to find new and different ways to take on tomorrow. So with that, let me begin first by introducing Mary. Mary is joining us. As you know, she is the General Counsel for Sherwin-Williams. She's been in that role since 2017. She leads a group of more than 30 lawyers, as well as paralegals and dozens of other support staff who provide both domestic and global legal services throughout all of Sherwin-Williams' business units and departments. Mary, in addition to her role as overseeing the legal department, she also oversees the company's environmental, safety and health, regulatory affairs, global product stewardship, and sustainability functions. And I just want to say, Mary, I'm really not sure when you sleep, because that sounds like an incredible amount of work for one person to be overseeing. But welcome. And Mary, I'd love to get things started by having you share with us a little bit of your early story, which is, can you share with us, what were your thoughts as you were growing up as a teenager and your early adulthood life? Was law your passion from early days, or was it something that you evolved toward?
So I grew up in New Hampshire. I'm not from Ohio. So I grew up about 45 miles north of Boston in a town right on the Massachusetts border. And I went to a really small all girls high school. And it was during those years that I somehow got really interested in the law. I'm not sure what sparked it, but it just became an interest of mine. And I really decided that I wanted to be a prosecutor. I remember, back in the days when we would actually get the Sunday newspaper, one week there was an insert in there, and it was America's toughest female prosecutors. And I must have read it, I don't even know how many times. And I eventually took it, and I had it on my wall in my bedroom. And that's what I was going to do. And when I went to college, I always considered myself pre-law, and I was always on the path of going to law school. And then when I got to law school, I took, like all of us, I took civil procedure and evidence in that first year, and discovered that I really didn't enjoy them very much, and that maybe that was not a great sign for being a prosecutor or being a litigator. So I sort of changed direction, because at the same time, I was taking a lot of business law classes and just learning more about corporate attorneys, and found it really interesting. Whereas in the past, I had kind of considered that to be really boring, and just switched gears and decided that I was going to be more of a corporate lawyer. And that's what I ended up being. So that's a little bit about my early fascination with the law, when I decided I wanted to be a lawyer.
I love it. That's a fascinating switch. I made a similar one, I have to say. I thought about pursuing criminal law while I was in law school, and then went in a very different direction. But that's part of the interesting part of growing up. As you evolve, you learn as much about what you don't want to do as you do what you do want to do.
Absolutely.
So I'm interested, the Vanderbilt Law School piece, what a cultural change to go from, as you described yourself, a girl from New Hampshire to Vanderbilt. Can you talk a little bit about how that culture was different, and what, if anything, you think that did to contribute to your evolution as a person?
Sure, and I'm glad that you asked. It's a little interesting. So when I was in college, I dated and eventually married the boy I started dating when I was 17 years old, right after I graduated from high school. And so when time came for me to go to law school, we literally broke out a map of the United States, and we're trying to figure out, like, where were there interesting and good law schools near places where he's a car guy, where he could potentially get a job working for a car company. And so that drove a lot of my applications. And so I applied to Vanderbilt because there were 2 car companies in the greater Nashville area. And through that process, really discovered that Vanderbilt was a smaller school, smaller law school, and really had a reputation for being very collegial, unlike some other places that had reputations as being highly competitive and pretty cutthroat. And I don't know why, but it occurred to me that kind of a cutthroat environment was not going to be the place for me, because when you graduate and you're working in a workplace, you have to be able to function in teams and get along with people. I wanted to enjoy my law school experience. So when things worked out and I was accepted to Vanderbilt, I couldn't have been happier. That said, the switch from the New England culture to the Southern culture was a huge cultural change. I'm from New England, so I can say this. We're maybe not the friendliest sort if you're just, walking around. Not that people are inherently, mean or unfriendly. It's just they don't go out of their way to say hello when you're on the street or in the line at the grocery store. So moving to Nashville, which was then, I don't know if it still is, ranked as America's friendliest city, was really strange, but I loved it and really quickly grew to love the people and the culture and the friendliness and the hospitality. And my best friends in law school were Southerners from Nashville, had grown up there, and just really it was a great place to go to law school. Really loved the people. It was just a much slower pace than I was accustomed to.
Change can be interesting. Again, a great learning and growth opportunity. So Justice Stewart, let me bring you into the conversation. By way of quick background for our audience, Justice Melody Stewart was elected in 2018 to serve as the 161st Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court, which is an accomplishment in and of itself. But I will say one of the pieces we're going to talk about a little more is that she was also the very first African-American woman to be elected to the Supreme Court of Ohio. Before she joined the Supreme Court, she was on the Court of Appeals in the 8th District here in Greater Cleveland, where she served for 12 years, including 1 year as the administrative and presiding judge. So Judge Stewart, I would love to understand actually, I know a little bit because you and I have the gift, I say it's the gift, you probably say the curse of knowing each other pretty well. Talk to us about your early days in terms of, was law your initial career of choice, or did you have other thoughts in mind?
I never thought much about what I wanted to be when I grow up. And I'm still trying to figure that out, as many of you have probably heard me say. When adults in your life say, and what do you want to be, a little girl? I didn't have a clue. And I always wondered why people were asking me that question when I was trying to enjoy my childhood, right? So I did not. All I ever knew was what I wanted to do at a particular time as it came up. So as you graduated from high school, excuse me, going to an all-girls college prep high school here in Cleveland, in Cleveland Heights, I knew if my mother was paying tuition, that kind of tuition for me to go to school, I was going to college. And so since I knew I was going to college and had to study something, I studied the only thing I was interested in at the time, and that was music. So I, studied music. And at the time, and I don't know whether young people do this now, but I didn't equate what you studied in school to a job. They were just two separate concepts to me. So that's why I promptly got my music degree and got a job in the healthcare industry. And did that for about a while and was intellectually bored. And then, my older sister is a lawyer. We graduated about 10 years apart. Well, my older sister has a law degree, I should say. We graduated about 10 years apart, and she wasn't real keen on law school, and I never gave it a second thought. But perused some books and thought it was interesting. And so once again said, well, let me apply to do this law school thing. Did it. Fascinating, interesting, intellectually stimulating. But again, no thoughts about a job or a career. I figured I would get a job because I had a law degree. Didn't know what it paid. Didn't have a sophisticated process of looking at law schools. I looked for the one where I could go to school and work. And that was one school in Cleveland. So I'm just one of those people who, and I thought I wanted to go on healthcare law since I came from working from a healthcare field into law school, took all the healthcare law courses I could take, never practiced day one in the area of healthcare law. So I just say that to say is, I just always pursued things that became of interest at the time. And fortunately, it opened doors for me to apply to do these different things.
So I would be remiss if I didn't share with the audience that you got your law degree from Cleveland Marshall College of Law, where you have also received an honorary degree and became an inductee in their Hall of Fame. So Your connection with Cleveland Marshall is deep, but it is not the only academic institution you've been connected to. You clearly have a passion for academia. Maybe you made decisions as they came for what you were interested in, but beyond your law school career and your undergraduate career, you spent several years teaching and working in a variety of administrative roles, not only at Cleveland Marshall, but also at Case Western Reserve, as well as the University of Toledo's Law School and at Ursuline College. Where did that passion for education and the academic environment come from?
I don't even know if I'd call it a passion. You know, I have to say again, and I tell young lawyers this all the time, listen to what other people think of you and where they think you might have a good fit and what they think you can do. Because as I was leaving law school, starting off practicing, because you know most of us think law degree go into practice, although I know some people say, I don't want to go into practice. But I was one of those who thought that's what you do. And I was really kind of excited about being a litigator. As I was leaving law school and deciding on what job I would take, because back in the 80s, we had the benefit of 3, 4, and 5 job offers. Sorry, folks, students now, but that was the case. And my legal writing professor said to me, will you come back and be one of my adjunct instructors for legal writing? And I thought to myself, well, I'll think about it because I got a B+ in the course and I really think I deserved an A. But I let that go. I came back and I started teaching legal writing as I was doing civil defense litigation. And that put me in the environment of academia where when other positions came available, I was there for them and knew about them. And I just fell into, I became a better writer teaching. And I like the intellectual prospect of it. I've always been interested, I will say that, I did have an interest in law school and appellate advocacy and did moot court. Never in my wildest dreams did I think when I'm standing up at a moot court competition, people will be standing before me in real life doing the same thing. And so that's my legal writing instructor put the bug in me for law academia, and then that's where I was ever since in various roles until I got to the bench.
It's amazing the role that somebody can put a bug in your ear, as you say, to become a mentor, to become an advisor, a champion. I'm interested, Mary, when you were coming out of law school and you made your move to Voorhees Sater, a law firm in Columbus, did you have someone who was inspiring or someones who were inspiring you to go the large law firm route?
Again, I'm gonna, I guess, blame it a little bit on my husband. We got married while I was in law school, and again, he was a car guy, and so once again, when the time came for me to find a job, trying to make sure that we both had opportunities, we broke out that map of the United States again and tried to find like where was there a good, mid-sized city. I didn't want to practice in a New York or an LA or a place like that, just not my personality. But where was there a good mid-sized city, perhaps near a car company where he could work? And so Voorhees was coming down to interview, and I was really fortunate that they hired me, and turned out to be a great fit. And my husband got a job at Honda outside of Columbus, and that's where we were for almost 20 years before moving to Cleveland so I could join Sherwin. But yeah, I think I always, since I went that corporate law route, I always envisioned myself working for a firm, and I thought a little bit about in-house opportunities, but not at first. I think I was primarily focused on just trying to get started and establishing myself and paying off my law school debt. That was a big thing. So that's how I landed at Voorhees. Really, really fortunate. It's a great firm with wonderful people.
For sure. Yeah. What was there a defining moment for you while you were in private practice, Mary, that led you to pursue what has now become sort of an extensive career as an in-house counsel?
I don't know that there was a moment. Early on in my career at Voorhees, ironically, the same person who recruited me in law school, a gentleman named Michael Martz, He's now the managing partner of Voorhees. He recruited me in law school. He was my summer associate mentor that summer that I worked for Voorhees. And then when I joined the firm, I think he was my official assigned mentor for a few different years, but he very early on put me on the Bob Evans account. And I sort of grew up doing work for Bob Evans, and had a lot of really wonderful opportunities because the company did not have an in-house legal department. They essentially outsourced everything to the firm. So I had a chance to work on corporate governance, SEC filings, mergers and acquisitions for them. And eventually, about a year after I became partner at Voorhees, I had a call from some of the folks I had worked with at Bob Evans for many years. And they said, hey, all this Sarbanes-Oxley stuff, like we can't continue to try to manage this, internally. We need to have somebody in-house. And would you consider, joining us as our first, general counsel and establishing a legal department? And I was pretty blown away. I think at the time I was 33 or 34. And I thought, wow, they're nuts. But I also viewed it as an opportunity to kind of go outside my comfort zone and to try something new. And I thought, if I don't take this opportunity to be general counsel of a publicly traded company, when am I going to get that opportunity again? But it was a really tough decision to leave the firm. I loved the people there, and I had worked really, really, really hard to be partner. And I was, so young in my partnership. It was tough. It was a tough decision to make, but ultimately thought, yeah, I'm going to go outside my comfort zone and try something new. And really glad that I did.
So Justice Stewart, I'm interested, Mary's just described what, to my ears, is a willingness to take a risk, as she said, to take herself out of her comfort zone and to move into an in-house corporate position, which was a wow opportunity. I am assuming there was a similar moment for you as you made the decision to throw your hat into the ring of not just the political arena, but running for the Court of Appeals. And then ultimately the Ohio Supreme Court. I'm interested in that first opportunity when you started to seriously think about becoming a judge and serving on the Court of Appeals. What helped push you to take that risk and perhaps step outside of your comfort zone?
Well, I gotta be completely honest with you, because I ran for the Court of Appeals 3 times before getting there. Starting in 2000 and becoming successful in 2006. And for me, 2006, the third time was going to be it. It wasn't much of a risk in that I was fortunate enough to always run from being employed. So I never ran for any position, appellate court or Supreme Court, for a job or for a position. I had a job each time I ran. Excuse me. So it wasn't so much out of the comfort zone in that I'm not one of those people, as my former colleague, retired Judge Pat Blackman used to always say. She would always say, it amazes me how some people roll out of bed in the morning and decide to run for judge. So I didn't roll out of bed. And I did the legwork and the homework. And as you said, and I'm not a political animal at all, still don't consider myself one. But, running for office is a political endeavor also. So you get the advice of people and you learn that it is a game in a lot of ways that you either play or get it played on you, as another retired judge would tell me. And so you learn about what it is you need to do and you do it. And that's really all you can do. It wasn't that much of a risk to me. It wasn't outside of my comfort zone in that I learned as much as I could learn. And some learning is at the time, learn what it takes, what you need to do, and then you do it, foot forward. Same thing with the Ohio Supreme Court. Talking to people who've done it, putting together an excellent team. And my part was just deciding to run and doing everything, I could, but the success of the election was due in large part to the efforts of other people and, of course, 1.5 million voters across the state. And so I think once you decide that you're going to do something, that's really all you can control. The rest is out of your control. And if you accept that, I think you'll do fine.
Yeah, I think what you're describing is one of the characteristics that I most admire of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, which is her grit. You know, she is one of the individuals who I think personifies what it is to make up your mind that you are going to do something, and then bit by bit, step by step, make it happen. Maybe not at the pace or as quickly as others might like, or maybe even as quickly as she would have liked, but man, did she stick with it and continue it forward. Justice Stewart, I got to say, the piece that sort of rings with me, though, is it may not have been a risk, but you dealt with failure. You described having lost elections before you won elections. And I'm interested in where did you dig down into yourself to deal with loss? Lawyers are competitive by nature generally, and we typically don't like to lose. So how did you turn those losses into the next opportunity to run and to run again?
I guess I don't really look at decisions that go the other way all the time as failures. I think there's something to be learned from everything. If I think how many jobs the lawyers apply for. I think I got my first rejection letter ever in life when I was applying to jobs from law school. And you get a lot of them, of course, I didn't finish number 1 or 2 in the class, or even number 5 or 10. And so the lower you are in the class, of course, you're going to get rejection letters. And despite the fact that it's several offers coming in, but I think now I have a total appreciation for the fact that sometimes you're just not where you think you're supposed to be. You're not supposed to go where you think you're supposed to go, or go a path that you think you're supposed to go, or walk through a door you think you're supposed to go through. And those doors sometimes have to close so that you can see the ones that are open to where you are. I mean, think of how many opportunities that if I had won the first time, and I say this, for example, we all know, or a lot of people know, the judicial offices are 6-year terms. Had I won the first time when I ran for the Court of Appeals, so I would have run in 2000, 2006 would have been my reelection year. And although I did get elected in 6, that was an unexpired term, so that was kind of a fluke. So 2000, 2006, 2012, guess when I would have been up again? 2018. So in 2018, do I run for the Ohio Supreme Court, where no one who looks like me has ever been elected to that court, or do I run safely and probably without opposition for my seat on the Court of Appeals? I tell you right now, that's a no-brainer.
Well, it's good for the state of Ohio that it was a no-brainer for you, for sure. So Mary, I'd love to come back to you and to dig a little deeper using a question that came in through the Q&A. You talked about people like Mike Martz, who helped, who eventually became a rainmaker in the legal community. And the question that's presented is, how are you so smart? And what practice tips, that's my word, by the way. Really, you were so smart to identify somebody so potentially influential in your life. How can newer lawyers, how can newer professionals identify people who they should follow, and or, as the questioner Lex said, hitch yourself to their rising star?
Wow. Well, I'm going to say that I didn't identify Michael Martz. Michael Martz identified me, and I'm incredibly thankful that he did. And in fact, I keep in touch with Michael, and we often chat. And sometimes that conversation is, "Hey, remember when you were down on the Vanderbilt campus?" And who would have thought? So I owe Michael a lot, as well as a number of other people, not only at Voorhees, but throughout my professional career, who served as mentors to me. And we can talk a little bit more if you want about how what I view as a true mentor, and sort of what it is and not in my view. But I think my tip is seek out people who do the types of work that you want to do, and go to them and seek opportunities. That's what I did at Voorhees, and I was really fortunate. I worked a lot with a woman named Susan Brown. Susan was one of the first, if not the first, female partner at a big firm in the state. She had also done the Wendy's initial public offering when she was an associate, pretty much on her own. And I certainly, hitched myself to Susan's wagon. Whatever she needed help with, I was there because I wanted to learn from her. So she taught me a great deal about SEC law, as well as another woman named Betsy Fair. I learned so much working with them. There's another gentleman, Mike Klein. He did a lot of, he did some SEC work, but he also did work venture capital. And he had a client, it was a female-owned business. And, I went to Mike and said, hey, I'm interested in learning about venture capital work and working on some of those deals. And he was like, hey, I got a great opportunity for you. And so, started working with him on those deals, got to know the client. That client then pursued an initial public offering. So I got to work on an IPO as a pretty young associate, with Mike and with Susan Brown, who they brought in to work on the IPO. So, not everybody is going to be receptive. And those are the people that you have to go around. There was another partner at the firm who did a lot of SEC work. And I went to that partner and said, hey, I'm interested in doing this work. Do you have a project that I could work on? And he said, oh, I've just closed a deal and I need someone to do the closing binders. And I thought, okay. And so I did the closing binders and I never went to that person again. I just found other people who were willing to train me and to give me opportunities and to work with me. And those are the folks that really supported me throughout my career. And certainly when I was up for partner, those are the folks that advocated for me and had really, taught me everything that I knew about being a lawyer.
Yeah, those are invaluable resources to have, but also your initiative. So not only were they willing to share, but you really sought out the opportunity to learn from them and to participate in the process of advancing yourself, in addition to doing great work. That combination hand in hand, I think, is critical. One of the things that you mentioned, Mary, and I'm going to switch this back over to you, Justice Stewart. Mary mentioned, sort of a trailblazer, one of the first women partners at a major firm in Ohio. Justice Ginsburg, again, another example of somebody who was a trailblazer in so many different ways. I came out of law school a little bit after Justice Stewart and a little bit before Mary. Women have been more than around 50% or sometimes a little more than 50% of graduating classes. But as we look up the echelon in leadership roles within the legal profession, women continue to lag behind men. The judiciary and public service tends to do better than corporate America. But I would say people of color, and in particular women of color, have also struggled perhaps harder than most. So Justice Stewart, I'm interested in your thoughts about what your experience has been in terms of being somebody who often was not represented with others around you in different areas, with the ultimate one being your first election to the Ohio Supreme Court as an African-American woman. What are your thoughts?
You're absolutely right when you talk about Justice Ginsburg and what blazes she trailed. And before I forget too, let me absolutely echo what Becky said earlier about if you have not gotten to that exhibit, it is truly it's truly incredible. And I think for people who are Jewish or people with law degrees and people and women, it's a particular resonance for you. And if you happen to be all three, Jewish female lawyer, then it really resonates with you. But it's for everyone too. So even if you're not Jewish and male or non-binary and don't have a law degree, there's a lot to appreciate there. So I echo that. I think for me, having, and Justice Ginsburg got on the court, President Clinton appointed her in the 90s.
Yep, 94.
So that was after I had finished law school. And Sandra Day O'Connor was on the bench for part of that time, but it still was very much a man's profession for me coming out of law school, in that we had an interim woman dean at the law school, but most deans were male, most of the professors were male. And then of course, as you noted, there were no women of color much in the law. Fortunately, growing up in Cleveland, there were a lot of women of color who were practicing and who were on the bench as judges. I don't know that there's too many places in Ohio where we would have had that. And so there are so many women of color whose shoulders I stand on. And now here I am sitting on the House Supreme Court, and out of the 7 justices, 4 are women. And the Chief Justice is a woman. The only woman the only woman Chief Justice Court has had. And can you believe, out of the 218-year history of the Supreme Court, there has only been 13 women, and 200 out of 163 justices, 218 years, 13 women, and 4 people of color, 2 men and 2 women. Justice Yvette McGee-Brown, of course, being appointed, so she was the first to serve. So 13 women and 4 people of color. But the path to get there is difficult too. It's not a job you apply for. You've got to run statewide. And for a lot of people, that's daunting, particularly when you have family, small children and different family commitments. I am hopeful, I'm positive. And in my time at the court, I hope that people feel that doors are opening for them, even if it's just a perception of my being there. Before I leave the court, whenever that is, I hope that we have done better. At the Supreme Court, we have about 250, 260 employees there, most of whom are lawyers, yet there are only 2 African-American people in the building with law degrees, of people of color with law degrees, African-Americans with law degrees, one of our division heads and me. That doesn't seem to make much sense to me. So, as I did have role models, that people that I saw who looked before me, hopefully I inspired some people behind me the same way.
Mary, what's been your experience as you've worked your way over the last 2 decades plus through your career on the corporate side in terms of the presence of women and the evolution of women in leadership roles?
I think it's changing. I think there's more focus and attention to the issue, not just for women, but just inclusion and diversity and equity in general. And I think the momentum that has been created, we just need to find ways to make it continue, and to try to make sure that we're providing the right opportunities so that people can continue to grow and have those career paths. At the same time, though, I always try to recognize that the path that I've chosen and the job that I have is not necessarily for everyone. And so I think my advice to people that are considering a job in the law is you figure out what's going to make you happy and what you want to do, and don't put too much pressure on yourself to think, well, I need to be a partner, or I need to be a GC, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. It really needs to be what's going to make you happy and how you define success for yourself. But I do think the overall environment has changed a lot. There's more of a desire to have women and people of color in leadership roles, and I've seen not just Sherwin, but all the companies that I've been associated with really try hard to put more focus and attention to the effort and make sure that the right development opportunities are being provided.
Yeah, intentionality is key for sure in making that happen. Justice Stewart opened the door to one of a question that came up in the chat, which is about this intersection of work and life and balance. Is there such a thing? Again, if you haven't been to the exhibit, go to the exhibit. One of my favorite aspects of the RBG exhibit is really the telling of the story of the partnership between Ruth and her husband, Marty. And for those that don't know the story, quick story. So they both attended Harvard Law School. Ruth was a year behind Marty. In her first year of law school, Marty developed testicular cancer and so was going through radiation and surgery and treatment. So Ruth not only went to her own classes, but then got notes from Marty's classmates, prepared dinner, took care of their young daughter, and then worked all night long to help Marty get his work done before around 2 a.m. she finally turned to her work. I mean, and always stayed at the top of the class, which is unbelievable. That's an extreme. That's an extreme. But I'm interested, Justice Stewart, how do you begin to balance having a life outside of the bench? Because I know how busy you are. I know how extensive the docket that the court carries in a variety of different capacities. How do you try to figure out how to carve out time that creates some semblance of balance?
No, I haven't figured that out. I'm sorry. Won't be as helpful in that regard. I even got a chat that says, hope I have time to play piano with his son. And I will carve out that time. Thank you very much. You know, it's especially in this pandemic mode. Well, first let me say, all of the justices don't live in Columbus. Matter of fact, I think only 2 justices live in Columbus. So we work from home for the most part anyway. And of course, the pandemic, you know, has put the whole court on work from home, which has allowed me to blend my personal life even more so with my, you know, professional life and my responsibilities. I have to say, I haven't much found the work-life balance. And one of the reasons why Justice Ginsburg is such a hero, so influential to me too, is because we have the similar work patterns. I didn't have to take care of a husband and children and do a spouse's work, but she, even toward the end of her days, still, you know, notoriously worked through the night. We're working the wee hours of the morning. And, you know, she was chided for falling asleep, I think one of the State of the Union addresses. And, you know, people are saying, oh, she's old, she's sickly. No, she doesn't, she works through the night, you know, she only gets a few hours of sleep. And I'm similar to that too. I have a similar work mode in working in the wee hours of the morning, but I do manage, everything is a priority now. And I know that sounds strange, but that's the only way I can do it. So if I've got, you know, deadlines for work and cases have to be in, that's a priority and I get that done. But if I'm also supposed to, you know, spend some time with a niece or nephew or go out to dinner with a friend, which hasn't been much recently, but that's a priority too. And so everything becomes a priority. And I know that sounds strange because we all only have 24 hours a day, but I have found that that works for me. And so if I am, you know, it was a priority for me at 6 o'clock this morning to unclog a drain. So I got up and made sure that drain was unclogged before my work is done. That's the only way I can get it done. And I might add a bunch of to-do lists so that you don't miss anything. I still miss things sometimes, but my to-do lists have to-do lists. And sometimes my to-do list even says, get up and walk. It's the only way I can do it. So that's my balance. It's called a blended balance.
I like the blended balance. Mary, how about you? Do you have a favorite app to make lists of your lists of your lists, or do you have a different strategy?
I'm old school and I could not survive without Post-it notes. If something really important I have to do, I write it on a Post-it note and usually stick it on my iPad or on my computer monitor. But that's how I keep track of things. I should be more organized, but that's just what works for me. But they're really, you know, the whole notion of work-life balance, there is no work-life balance. I mean, you just do the best you can in the moment. I have, my husband has worked as an engineer, you know, throughout our life together. We have 2 boys. They're now teenagers. And it's, you know, it's never been easy. It's been challenging, but it's also been a lot of fun. I'm fortunate. My husband, he could not have been more supportive. I mean, he has, I would say, consistently and without exception, throughout my career prioritized, my ambitions and desires over his own. He's my Marty. He's really been a champion, or since we started dating when we were so young, he would say he was an early adopter. But he's also shouldered a lot of the load at home. We're not from here. We don't have family here that we can lean on. And it truly, it takes a village. And so, we've tried to always say, okay, well, how are we going to take care of the kids? Well, we need to make sure that we have consistency because we don't have family. So daycare is the right choice for us versus a nanny. And then, who's going to do drop off? Who's going to do pickup? Who's going to make dinner? It's just, you juggle as best you can. And, there are times where I certainly prioritize what my kids need. And I think I've just been really transparent about that. I mean, I've been lectured consistently throughout my career for working too hard. I've never been criticized for spending time with my family. In fact, John Marikas, who I have so much respect and admiration for, he's notorious for, he'll come into my office if he's leaving and I'm still here, and he just turns my light out and tells me, like, go home to your family. So having that support system at work is really critical. So you just juggle, you do the best you can. I often feel like I'm letting somebody down. It's just the way it is. So just try to deal with the craziness, be present in the moments that you have. If there are things that you can offload, like, cleaning the house, if you're able, that's not where you are probably providing the most value. So if you have the ability to do that, then great, utilize that time for work or for family. But that's how I've done it. But there's certainly no secret sauce.
Well, I'm going to jump in and put a little bit of a plug in. I think that what you've touched on is this being transparent and being open about what you're struggling with. I think there used to be a perception that women who had it all together would somehow just manage to barrel through. And the reality is that maybe on a given day you may have life in balance, but many of the days, most of us are not in balance. And we just try to do better one day to the next. At the CMBA, we have nearly 5,000 members, lawyers, paralegals, judges, business professionals who work in and around the legal industry. We just did an all-member survey asking a bunch of different questions about how people have managed through the pandemic. And one of the pieces of information that came back is that the thing that is keeping people awake the most at night is they're worried about their own mental health and stress management. So seeking out resources, whether it's through an organization like ours at the CMBA, and it's Mental Health and Wellness Week here at the CMBA, come join us if you haven't already, or elsewhere, it's critically important to reach out and to find ways to get assistance and to be real about you are not the only one struggling with trying to keep things in balance. So good for both of you for keeping at it and for keeping it real for us. Mary, we have a follow-up question in the chat from, again, Lex, who mentions that he saw that Sherwin-Williams was among the Forbes Best Employers for Diversity again in 2021. Congratulations, Sherwin-Williams, for being intentional and making that happen. Lex would like you to talk, if you can, Mary, about how much of that outcome stems from the C-suite at Sherwin-Williams. And for those that don't know, the C-suite are all of those chiefs, the chief executive, the chief legal, the chief operating.
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. And I'll put in another little plug and say that we've also been named one of the best employers again for new college grads and for women. And we're incredibly proud of that. I would say that it stems directly from the top. Again, my hat's off to John Marikas, who probably 2 or 3 years ago, it was probably 3 years ago now. My sense of time with the pandemic is not what it used to be, but probably 3 years ago, he started traveling around and doing CEO forums on inclusion and diversity. Meeting with our employees around the country and talking about, these issues and, what's their experience like at Sherwin, to help educate himself and other leaders across the organization to some of the things that our employees are facing that, that in many cases we have not. I think those were incredibly powerful. It helped to make our employees feel like they had a voice. We have a terrific network of employee resource groups for employees of color or different gender identification, you name it. They're women. There's all sorts of employee resource groups to try to help employees and make them feel like they're among people like them and that their differences are valued. We've also had unconscious bias training throughout senior management, and we're working that way down. But at the heart of it is, we're an organization that cares very much about people. During the dark early days of the pandemic, when things were shutting down and none of us knew, what was going to happen, it was just a full-on panic mode of, how are we going to manage through this? What's it going to mean for the company? And John, to his credit, I remember talking to him on multiple occasions, and he just kept saying, Mary, we've got 61,000 families. We have 61,000 employees, but that means 61,000 families that are counting on us to do the right thing. That means keeping people safe, and it means, keeping the doors open and trying to make sure that the company can survive through this. And I'm so pleased with how our employees across the organization rose to that occasion, and we've come through it. We've come through it well, and I really attribute a lot of what the company's accomplished to John and his leadership and my peers on the executive team. It's just a really incredible group of people who keep the focus on the families and the customers that we support and serve.
Absolutely. Yeah. So a related question then, and Justice Stewart, why don't we come back to you? Mary mentioned the intersection of workforce and pandemic related issues. There was a recent report that came out of McKinsey & Company that was talking about and sort of focused in on women in the workforce and what the challenges of the last 16 months have brought, yes, to both men and women, but it seems to be a disproportionate impact on women. There are some that are calling this the beginning of a she session, not a recession, but a she session, where women are reporting that they are either planning on leaving the workforce or significantly stepping back from the workforce in order to continue to manage what's happening outside of the work life and in the home life, whether it's children or aging parents or their own mental and physical health. Justice Stewart, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? Do you think that this may be an impact in the public sector where you spend the bulk of your time?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure that I know what impact this will be. And if I could wear more of my social science hat, I'd probably look at that, but I wear the legal hat most of the time. What will be interesting to me if that happens, and good for women, people in general, but particularly women who can do that and who can afford to do that. This whole year and a half has taught all of us to reevaluate our priorities and to look at how we do things. I mean, look at how many women for years have tossed to management or C-suites or partners in firm working from home, and that just was not acceptable. You wouldn't be as efficient and effective, and now working from home is the rage. So it took a pandemic for something that women have been saying for decades we can do, for people to say, oh, it can be done, both men and women. I think if there's a large exodus of women from the workforce in general, I think a lot of lessons will be learned. I think, we in this country are so blessed and so fortunate, and there's so much we take for granted. Not all of us, but a large majority of us. And every now and then we have to be reminded of what we have and the value of what we have in raising up people when we can. And we don't tend to do that when we're going on in our everyday lives and everything is hunky-dory. So I hope if that happens, then I think there will be more recruitment efforts for women. And I think the value of women in the workforce will go up. And it's strange that has to happen. And I'll conclude just by saying and tying it in, you know, with some of the things that Justice Ginsburg did way before we were even having discussions about this. I mean, remember, and I have to say, I'm privileged that I got a chance to meet her in 2019 at the National Book Festival in DC, and she had come off some recent medical treatment, and she was frail, and I knew she didn't shake hands, and I, you know, wasn't going to approach her, but I was brought over to meet her, and she stopped before she got on stage, and she put her hand out, and she shook my hand, and I was introduced to her as a justice on the Ohio Supreme Court, and smiled and, you know, says, a pleasure to meet you. We have to remember that this is a woman who became famous, quite frankly, because of how she made life better for others. I mean, she fought for equal justice for all, you know, for women, because for women and people of color and people who were traditionally discriminated against, but for all people. She raised up people. I found out about, you know, Pauli Murray, the civil rights activist who was a lawyer who later became Episcopal priest, Black woman, who really opened the door for equal protection, the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to be applied to women, who helped Justice Ginsburg, then Justice Attorney Ginsburg, write the brief for Reed versus Reed. And so much so that Justice Ginsburg at the time made sure Pauli Murray's name was on that brief, yet didn't argue the case. I mean, this is what you do. And this is, I think, the epitome of who she was, as the giant she was in our profession, because every aspect of her life was lifting other people up and recognizing other people and being sure there was equality for other people. And that's the legacy she's left with me more than anything else.
What a great summary. What a great summary. All right, we've got 90 seconds left. So I would love to end this on an up note for both of you. I'd love to know, as you think about your career, what's been one accomplishment that really stands out for you? Something that you are most proud of? And I'm sure there are many. So if you don't mention somebody's name or some employer's existence, I'll just say we didn't ask for an exhaustive list, just one. Mary, is there one accomplishment that stands out for you?
No, I think overall, the thing that I'm most proud of is the team that I get to lead and watching the way that people grow and develop, and to the extent that I have some small piece or hand in that, that's what I'm most proud of. Watching people really come into their own and become greater lawyers, paralegals, professionals. That's what I'm most proud of.
Justice Stewart?
I got to tell you, Becky, I don't think it's happened yet. And that's not to minimize, you know, being elected to the court, obviously, but, you know, I did my part, as I said earlier, to run and cast a vote for myself, but it was a collective efforts of, you know, others and, you know, over 1 million voters responsible for my election. So, but I don't think my greatest one has happened yet. At least I hope not.
Well, I'll just say that I'm surprised that you didn't say your greatest accomplishment was serving on the board of directors for the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association and having the chance to work with me. Okay.
But I didn't want to sound like I was pandering.
Well, listen, let me jump in and say one more. Thank you. Thank you, Justice Stewart. Thank you, Mary, for being a part of this conversation. It's been such a treat to have a chance to talk with you today and to share your insights and your experiences with this group. I'm going to turn it back to Emma as she closes things out.
Thanks to everybody who signed in.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you so much, Becky. Thank you, Mary. And thank you, Justice Stewart, for sharing your stories, speaking about your careers with us, and for such a thoughtful and thought-provoking conversation. And thank you, Becky, for your thoughtful questions. I'd like to thank everybody who joined us today for being in the audience and for spending part of your Wednesday with us. If you enjoyed the program today, you can join us again next month for the next program in our My Story series, in which Inez Reyna, the founder of local chocolate shop Sweet Designs, will be sharing her story of immigrating and starting her own business in the Cleveland area in conversation with PNC's Alina Ray. You You can find more information on this program and anything else we'll be offering by visiting our website, www.maltzmuseum.org, though I will warn you, summer programming is coming soon. Thank you again to Mary, to Justice Stewart, to Becky, and to everybody here. I hope you all have a wonderful evening.